interested in.
Okay, so I want everyone to raise their hand as high as they can. Okay, now I want you to go just a little bit higher. Wow, okay, you can go ahead and put your hands down. Notice I told everyone to raise their hand as high as they could, but whenever I said go a little bit higher, everyone in this room was able to go just a little bit higher. My name is Amber Vanderburg. Today we are going to talk about taking remote teams, taking our highest performance and go just a little bit higher than we did before. Now, whenever we discuss remote teams, there are actually a variety of remote teams that we can be a part of. The first type of remote team is a global remote team. This is a team that is all over the world. They're gonna face different challenges, different opportunities than, say, a hybrid remote team. They're going to have to address different time zones, different cultures. So if you are in a global remote team, go ahead and clap twice. I'll give you another opportunity. If you're in a global remote team, go ahead and clap twice. Okay, we have some people in global remote teams. The second type of a remote team is a team that is in the same regional area. So this could be a team that is across the Netherlands. It could be a team that is in the western part of Europe. So they're in a general region of the world. If you are in a regional remote team, go ahead and clap 3 times. Okay, decent amount. The next type of remote team is a remote team that is in the same local location. So this would be a team that is based remotely here in Amsterdam, okay? So those teams are gonna have slightly different challenges than, say, a global remote team. If you are in a local remote team, go ahead and clap twice. A few, okay. And then the last is a hybrid remote team. So that is a team that spends half the time in the office, half the time at home or somewhere not in the office. If you're in a hybrid remote team, go ahead and clap 3 times. Wow, that is a good variety of teams that we have. Thank you, that gives me some direction of who to address some of these challenges to. It's good to point out that as you are looking up how to collaborate, how to work within a remote team, the type of remote team that you are in will dramatically impact how these concepts are implemented and what types of tools are going to be best for you. The first thing that we can do whenever we are working within a team is to communicate expectations. Especially if you are in a remote team, you're probably not going to be able to see the other people that are within your team physically. You're not going to see what they are doing, right? And so you need to be able to log into work with confidence, knowing what clearly is expected of you. Now, if you were in the workshop yesterday, you saw that we did an 8-box challenge. Raise your hand if you did an 8-box challenge yesterday. Seen several people, okay. If you want to do this, you can message me on Twitter, you can meet me afterwards, and I can share that activity. It takes about 2.5 minutes that you can do to clarify expectations in your team. For those of you who were in the workshop yesterday, I told you we were going to learn a new way to clarify expectations. You can clarify and communicate expectations a lot of ways. So I gave one tool yesterday, I'm going to give a different tool today. So this is an activity that I call Same Direction, and it incorporates storytelling. So we will come into a collaboration meeting at the beginning, preferably at the beginning of a project or beginning of a working relationship, and we'll begin to tell stories. Meaning, let's say that we are having trouble with this specific code, and we need an answer very quickly. Who is going to take the lead? Who's going to be responsible for helping to fix this specific challenge? And then you allow people to write in who are some people that we could go to. The answer does not have to be one person, but it should not be 8 people, right? So you're looking for about 2 to 3 people. So you can look at specific outcomes. going through specific stories. In this situation, who is a person that I can go to? Who is a person that is expected to take the lead? I've been in some teams that we will do this activity. If we are in a hybrid remote team, we'll actually physically point to who we think is going to be the lead in that. If we have a lot of disagreement in who is going to take the lead, then that's a good time for a conversation. I like this activity because it does take out the person, it puts the outcomes first, right? So same direction is a good activity. Again, it takes about 5 minutes to do within your team. And this helps us to overcome one of the greatest barriers to giving excellent feedback and having excellent communication within our team. And that is the fundamental attribution error. Now, especially in a remote team, we do not see everything that is going on on the other side of the screen. We do not see the crying baby, the barking dog. We do not see the confused look. We do not see everything that is going on behind the outcome. Now, the fundamental attribution error is really a fancy way of saying that too oftentimes we judge other people by their outcomes while we judge ourselves by our intentions. We experience this every day. We see this whenever we're driving down the road. Somebody cuts us off and clearly they're a horrible driver, completely inconsiderate. We need to take their keys and get them off the road. But if we accidentally cut somebody off, we didn't mean to cut them off. We didn't know that the lane change was coming. We didn't know we needed to merge so soon. And we start to look at our intention. I was working with one team that had an individual in their team, in their collaboration meetings, that was seen as abrupt. People came, they said, Amber, this person is abrasive whenever they speak at meetings. Some even said malicious. And so we kept the fundamental attribution error in mind and asked, what is your intention whenever you are speaking at meetings? And we found that he was intending to be passionate. He was intending to be persuasive. And so there was actually a gap between intended behavior and perceived behavior. And by asking for intention, we were able to bring the two closer together. Now, we talked about clarifying expectations, communicating expectations, and being aware of the intent as we're trying to achieve these expectations. This is a good opportunity for us to have proactive conversations. Now, a proactive conversation is something that I do whenever I am working with a new client, whenever we're starting a new project, whenever I have new team members. And a proactive conversation, especially in a remote team, goes a little something like this. At some point in our working relationship, there's probably going to be tension. At some point in our working relationship, there will be frustration, there will be heat. And so while the emotions are low now, let us proactively discuss how we are going to handle that situation whenever it inevitably arises. In a remote team, I'm not going to see the shoulders going up. I'm not going to see the face turning red. We need to have proactive conversations to know when to bring up tension and how to address it. Now, a proactive conversation, it's more than just, hey, if there's a frustration, bring it up. No, we're actually going to get very specific. So you can use the 8-box challenge, you can use the same direction activity to have a proactive conversation from here. I was working with one team and they had a known habit. They had worked together before and they had experienced past frustrations from past experience. They knew as they were starting this new project that the team had a challenge of circular conversation. So they would discuss ideas, and not really make a lot of decisions. And so they had a proactive conversation. And they decided to time box their conversations in their collaboration meetings. They would have time for discussion, they would have time for final remarks, and then they had Elmo time, which stood for enough, let's move on, time to make a decision. I was working with another team that had a challenge of really wanting everything to be really perfect before they went through with their product, so before they released their product. And so what happened is they had extremely long times in between their releases. And so rather than waiting till the next iteration of change, rather than putting it in the backlog, they were wanting to get everything done right then, right now. As you can imagine, this dramatically impacted the performance of the team. And so we had a proactive conversation. We said, okay, we're going to implement Gitmo, which stood for this is good enough to move on. We're going to, if we want to continue to improve, we are going to continue to improve, we're going to implement that in the next iteration of change. So a proactive conversation, that is more than just if there is tension, let's address it. Let's be very catered, be very specific to be strategic. What are some specific pain points that we may know, or maybe some that we don't know? What are some specific pain points that we are going to have a game plan to address? This does make for a slightly uncomfortable conversation at the beginning. It saves for a very uncomfortable conversation later down the road. We had a few people in here that were in globally remote teams and regionally remote teams, especially if you are in a global or regional remote team. Different people, different cultures may address and confront frustrations a little differently. If you are in a global remote team, a proactive conversation about tensions in your remote team is absolutely critical. Now, proactive conversations are a good idea. I recommend them for anyone that is coming into a team. However, most of the time, whenever people call me and my company, we're already past that. we're in the midst of a project. And so the question I get is, how can we effectively give feedback? Well, the first thing that we need to do is to be mindful of the fundamental attribution error, and we need to seek understanding. Seek intention. Try to understand what is going on. And then we move on to the purpose of feedback. Now, there are 3 different purposes of feedback that you can have, and identifying that purpose can dramatically impact the effectiveness of the feedback that you give. The first type of feedback is to encourage desired behavior. Now, this is way more than good job, well done, keep up the good work. That sounds nice, but it's not specific enough, so the person does not know what action should be repeated to get another good job. If you are giving encouraging feedback, I want you to seek understanding, and then I want you to use the what-why model. So, what is the action that you want repeated? What do you want repeated? And why is that effective? What do you want repeated, and why was that effective? This is very clear feedback so that the person knows what to do again in the future. What specific behavior, action, or outcome is encouraged? The next purpose of feedback is to correct undesired behavior. So again, in this situation, we want to be very specific to be strategic. And so we are going to use this what-why model twice. So in encouraging, we use 1 layer. In corrective, we're going to use this layer 2 times. So the first thing we're going to do is have a conversation with the individual and discuss what is the undesired behavior. What is the undesired outcome? What's the undesired action? And why is that undesired? Then we're going to go 1 layer deeper. What is an alternative action? What's an alternative outcome? And then why is that preferred? Why would that be more effective? Many times this second why is forgotten. But the second why is where we get our buy-in. The second why is where we really see the impact of the alternative action. So for corrective feedback, we're going to state what was ineffective and why was that ineffective? What is the preferred action? And why is that preferred? The third purpose of coaching, the third purpose of feedback is to coach. Now, for coaching feedback, we are going to build upon current behavior. And so we are going to use the what, why model twice again, all right? So this is going to be the same, except in a coaching situation, we're going to state what happened, right? What was the action, and why was that somewhat effective, or why was that somewhat ineffective? Then we'll discuss what would be an alternative action for more effectiveness, right? The goal from a coaching conversation, or from a corrective conversation, is to move into a coaching conversation the next time that you follow up. So, to summarize, we're going to seek for understanding and then get to the meat of that feedback. Especially if you are in a remote team, we must be very clear in the way that we are giving our feedback. And so, identifying the purpose and using this what, why model is a very simple way for us to be effective in the way that we are communicating within our team. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to clarify the action steps and follow up. Has anyone ever heard of Amelia Bedelia? No, she is a childhood favorite of mine. Amelia Bedelia is a housemaid, and so she goes into a home and she is given very, very clear instructions by the homeowner. The homeowner gives her a list of things that need to be done by the end of that day. And so she's told to do things like dust the furniture, draw the drapes, dress the turkey. Now, Amelia Bedelia reads this list and she begins to throw dust all over the furniture. And then she begins to get out a pen and paper and she begins to draw the drapes. She gets out clothes and she begins to dress the turkey. How many of you have ever felt like this after coming back from a feedback session, thinking that you were very, very clear in what the action step was going to be moving forward? Next thing you know, there's dust being thrown all over the furniture. One way that you can clarify action steps is by asking the questions. So you can actually say, this action step, the alternative action or the desired action that we want repeated in the future, tell it in a story. What are some other opportunities, or what are some opportunities that we have in the future to implement this alternative action? What does that look like? Clarify the action steps that you agree upon within your team. Now, we've talked a lot about how to develop your message. Let's talk about the method of delivery within a remote team specifically. This is a love letter written to my great-grandmother in 1912. It reads, "Fall off the roof, fall down the cellar, but don't fall in love with another feller." Apparently my grandmother was quite the heartthrob. So it brings me to this question: what makes love letters so effective? What makes them so powerful? What did you say? No. Say that again? Recent. There's a few things. It's something tangible that you can hold. It's something that there's a lot of intent in writing it. But one thing that makes love letters so powerful is that there is a span of time in between correspondence. So there is a span of time for the person receiving the letter to digest the words, for the emotion to build, for me to ponder the words. And so by the time that the next correspondence is received, the person is emotionally invested in the conversation, emotionally invested in the words. Now, this is super desired in love letters. This is not desired with emails. We see this happen. We have conversations that could have been a 5-minute phone call, and now we are 47 emails deep. We have spent 2 days trying to solve this problem. We are emotionally and energy exhausted trying to solve this challenge. And so we have to keep in mind the feedback loop, right? So what is the span of time in between each correspondence? There's 3 things to consider here. First, we need to consider the emotion. If we have a highly emotional topic, then we need to be in a faster feedback loop. So this could be a video chat, it could be a phone call, it could be in person if you are in a hybrid team. Also, if you are in a highly emotional or highly complex, that is the time that I would recommend you turning on your camera. If we are in a low emotion or low complex, then that is an opportunity for us to use slower feedback loops. Okay, so this could be an email, it could be a memo. For some, it could be a text. For me, texting is a slow feedback loop for me. All right, so we're first going to consider the emotion. If it's high emotion, we need faster feedback loops. That is also a time that I would recommend turning on the camera. The next thing that we need to consider is the complexity. How many emails, this is a real question we'll ask our teams, how many emails is it going to take going back and forth before it's time for us to change our method of communication and pick up the phone? If we're 20 emails deep, that might be an excellent opportunity for more synchronous collaboration. If you are in a global or a regional team, the challenge of when to have asynchronous and synchronous collaboration should be considered here. If it's highly emotional, then having that asynchronous, having a long gap time in between correspondence can make something somewhat emotional very quickly, all right? So if it's very complex, this might be a better time for faster feedback loops for synchronous collaboration. If it's not very complex, you can be in a slower collaboration, slower feedback loop. And then the last thing to consider is the person. There are some people it might be more beneficial for you to have a faster feedback loop. Other people, you can use a slower feedback loop. Right, so we need to consider the individual or individuals that are within this team. I alluded to it earlier. For some people, the speed of that feedback loop may depend on the person. For some people in my team, texting is a very fast feedback loop. For people like me, that is a very slow feedback loop. I am not as quick in my texting. So we have to consider the individual, their desires, what's going to be most effective, and preference as well. This is the ultimate question with remote teams. What is the difference between me sitting at home working for you versus working for your competitor? The answer has to be more than pay. It has to be more than pay. How do we create an excellent remote culture? Studies have shown again and again and again, repeatedly, year after year, that the #1 factor of engagement at work is having a best friend at work. So the question that we're asking now is, how do we create an environment where you can create remote best friendships? It's probably not through a happy hour. Trips. Yes, come to DevOps Amsterdam. This could be the team building. I'm so sorry, I can't hear. I'm so sorry, communication in Slack. Yeah, having a random channel or having a specific channels for your interests, absolutely. Yeah. There have been some excellent relationships created through Slack channels. Actually, there have, yeah. Excellent. Any other ideas? Yes. Yeah. Custom emojis. Yes. Yes. More, please. Niels, yes.
So an idea about randomly matching people who usually don't work together in a session.
Oh, yes. I'll repeat that. Randomly matching people in sessions. Yeah. In a dual session, right? Yeah. Great. Yeah, these are excellent ideas. All right, one more.
Work meetings in Fortnite.
Fortnite for the win. Absolutely. These are excellent ideas. This is the question to ask. All right, so what is the difference? What we found is that there are 4 major opportunities for ownership that you can use within teams. So you can look at different processes. So what is our process of communication? What are our methods of communication? Some people said that with Slack channels, with emojis, with GIFs. All right, so these could be different methods of communication. Projects, that could be trips, could be Fortnite. Projects in this context is anything with a potential beginning and end. And then the roles that you're playing. So matching up with someone, having a mentor. If you want more information on the different opportunities for ownership, there's a QR code there to a book about different opportunities for ownership that you can use to create a uniquely better culture within your team. All right, so we've gone through a lot of words. We have learned a lot of new ways that we can better communicate with our team. And with that, I think about whenever I used to be a football coach or a soccer coach with Paris Saint-Germain and with Adidas Game Day, and I coached a variety of different teams. This was one of my youngest teams that I coached. On the first day of football, one of my youngest players was 6 years old. He was so excited. He came running out onto the field, and he began to yell, "Pass, pass, pass!" Now, I noticed that he was yelling pass whenever the other team had the ball. He was yelling pass whenever he was miles away from the action, and he was yelling pass whenever he had the ball. So then he was running with the ball, going pass, pass, pass. And so I looked, I said, "Why are you yelling pass?" He said, "Miss Ambermem, I do not know what it means. I only know it is a football word." You know, sometimes I hear organizations sound a little bit like my friend Achinthia. They're yelling agile, communication, leadership, collaboration. We got this, because we know that those are good words that can score big goals. But if we're in the wrong position, if we're miles away from the action, or even if we have the ball and we don't know in which direction we're going, then we will not be successful. The team will begin to tune you out the same way that they tuned out my friend Achinthia. But if we take the time to intentionally build our teams by creating an environment for success, by clearly communicating expectations, by clearly giving feedback and communicating that feedback in an effective method, and by creating environments and cultures to be uniquely better, then we'll be in a position to yell pass, to receive the ball, to move forward, and to score really big goals within organizations. I want to thank you all so much for having me here today.